This is Only the Strong Survive, a podcast powered by Kahn Media, where we dive deep into the world of business, leadership, and innovation. I'm your host, Dan Kahn, and I'm honored to have you join us today. So, let's get ready to learn some survival skills together. Welcome to our first field episode of Only the Strong Survive. This is Dan Kahn, and I am proud to be talking to you from the SHOT Show. Originally, it was a firearms trade show in Las Vegas. It has evolved. It's produced by the NSSF, which is the trade foundation and the trade association for hunt, fish, tactical industry, primarily around firearms. It's a really interesting show, especially for someone who spent their entire life going to the SEMA show. It's a nice contrast. It's a different industry. It's more directly in line with Tread Agency. And I'm here with Beth Breton, the president of Tread.
Hi, Dan. It's nice to be here. And we're so excited to be at SHOT Show and to see all the new products, chat with all the manufacturers, ranges, retailers, all of that here at SHOT Show in Las Vegas.
So just to kind of give you a preamble, what we're doing today is Monday. The SHOT Show starts tomorrow, Tuesday. We spent yesterday out at the range with Beretta, who we were working with to produce a big series of events for them, the B2B events this year, and they were kind enough to invite us out to their range day. We got to demo their product, learn about their product, meet their whole international team from all over the world. It's a 600-year-old company. It was a really neat experience. Today, we spent some time meeting with some different publishers and pre-planning, and then tomorrow we're going to be working the show floor, both with clients and potential clients, and also just talking to people, learning about their stories, learning about primarily American manufacturing, which is one of the things we really like to focus on OTSS, as well as Tread Agency and Kahn Media. So looking forward to the show. Hope you guys enjoy it. This will be a test. I am not an audio engineer, so our normal team is not here. So we're just going to be doing this on the fly. It might be a little noisy. There might be some ambient, but hopefully the stories are really good and you guys enjoy it. So Beth, anything you were looking forward to at the show this year that you want to talk about?
Just really excited to see clients and to see new product. That's always fun too. I think we're going to do breakfast with the governor of the state of Montana, so I think that'll be great as well. So yeah, just looking forward to seeing old friends and new and everything that SHOT Show has to offer. It's great to have NSSF be such an advocate for the industry, and I think it's just exciting for us to be here.
Give everybody a little bit of your background, like what you did before you came to Tread and Kahn.
I've been in the outdoor industry for many years, and I started with a company called Tepui Tents, which was one of the first rooftop tent companies in North America. Worked on the brand and manufacturing side for many years. And at that time, overland was becoming really popular. It's still become popular. It was a great way for me to be in both automotive and outdoor. And then also worked for a similar type company called Go Fast Campers. And then I worked for a company called Guide Fitter, which works with about a couple hundred brands in the outdoor space, in hunting, in shooting sports, and general outdoor rec. So that's my background. The background of how I got involved with Tread was Dan posted about it. And I said, hey, Dan, we've run in the same circles for a while. What are you guys up to over there? So that's kind of the history of how I got involved in Tread.
Well, it's been a great partnership so far, and I really appreciate the intelligence and ideas you bring to the table. You know, it's interesting. A lot of the guests we've had on the show are people that have had these amazing careers or started companies or worked for brands that did really cool things. And the thing that seems to be a constant across all these different creative, interesting people is that they've led like a mission-driven life. Like these are all people that want to spend their whole life working, whether it was in automotive or fishing or the military and, farming. Like we've had this very wide variety of people on the show. But the universal thing I keep hearing from people is like, I didn't know what to do with my life. And then I found this one thing that I became very passionate about. And then I just chased that thing. And I know with you're very passionate about the outdoors, and that's been kind of the constant is the outdoors. But tell us about when you were young, how you sort of found that, because I know you kind of found your own path that you kind of pushed your parents into allowing you to pursue.
Yeah, I definitely had two great parents. The older I get, the more I realize that I sort of had a unique childhood and two very unique individuals I was raised by. When I was a kid, I was very interested in the West, and my mom worked for United Airlines.
And this is in Ohio?
Yes, I grew up in Ohio, rural Ohio, not too far from Akron. My mom worked the whole time I was growing up, and she worked for United Airlines. And so we were able to travel a lot. We had that benefit to go a lot of places that we might not have been able to go otherwise. And I was sort of obsessed with the West, and I sort of put out this notion that I wanted to do something different, but I didn't know what it was. And I've discovered that there was something called, kids go away to camp. So I went to camp in the West, But what was an interesting part of that experience was my mom sort of empowered me to say, well, if you can figure out an option, then maybe we can make it work. And so I went to the library. I found information about camps. This was back when you had to check out the books, of course. This was
You can't, but this isn't like some like day camp where you go like.
No, I found that this book called Ranches of the American West, and in the back page, there was 4 camps listed. I could remember the location of each one of the camps, and I wrote to each one of them to send me more information. And one of those was Teton Valley Ranch Camp in Wyoming. So going through that whole process was not just like the mere process of saying, I love the outdoors. It was also as a kid to learn that like you could work the system a little bit and you could figure out a way to do these things. So I wrote that camp. I applied for a scholarship, a financial scholarship to go there, and I was accepted, and really kind of changed the way I saw things, and it sort of re-solidified it in my mind that you can kind of navigate the system in some different ways. And I was really passionate about the outdoors, and that's contributed to that as well. And then I ended up going to school in the West. And after I was done with all of my school, I ended up back in Wyoming for a couple of years too.
And now you live in the West.
Now I live in Montana. So, yep. It continues.
Very cool. I appreciate you sharing that, and I'm looking forward to spending the next couple of days of the show with you. And I'm looking forward to spending some time with the governor of Montana, so stay tuned for that. Hopefully that works out. We've also got some other really cool small businesses that we're hoping to talk to, some people we've met over the years. So I think it should hopefully, as long as we can get over the ambient noise and some technical learning curves, and if you guys can be patient with us, I think hopefully it'll be a good episode. So stay tuned. Welcome to SHOT Show 2025, day 1, morning 1. We're about 45 minutes in. Our first stop is with my friend Tyler from Guzzle H2O. Tyler, nice to see a friend in the first few minutes of the show.
Yeah, I mean, this is our very first time being at this event, and really, one of our first times with the hunting community. So yeah, we're excited to be here, and it's really amazing to check out all the new companies and meet a bunch of new people. So
for some background, Guzzle has supported a few of our events at Tread. They were at a couple of events and filtering water and supporting our traction series. But for listeners who don't know who you guys are, give us a little backstory. Tell us about the company, about the brand, kind of where the idea came from.
we have been building water purification gear for about 5 or 6 years. And we started out actually trying to solve a problem for professional sailors who show up, at a marina, might be an international location. They got 25 guys that need drinking water, and they're pretty sure that if we drink the water at the marina, we're all going to get sick. So we developed carbon filters and partnered with an LED UV company to come up with a portable solution to treat, whatever available fresh water you've got. So we started with that, and pretty soon figured out there was, not that many sailors in the world. So we started building equipment for overland and people who just love playing in the outdoors. So we've refined our products over the last few years and got to a point where we've got like built-in systems that go in adventure rigs and RVs and boats. And then we've got a great portable system that you can pump, filter, and purify water out of lakes and streams. So any freshwater source.
And at our traction events, the first one we did with you, you were pulling water out of a stream.
Yeah.
And Creighton was one of our guests he was pulling fish out of the stream, and you were pumping water out of the stream and filling everyone's canteens. And
yeah,
the second one, I think, was that our overland event. I thought was even more gnarly because Mike Murray on our team had this old horse trough full of water that was like, it had a layer of like green slime on the top.
Yeah, and I think that water was put out there for the cattle that it just left the site. That one was pretty gross.
And that's what we were drinking, and it was fine. It was good water.
Yeah, the carbon fixes the taste, and the UV kills bacteria, protozoa, and viruses.
This is the unit, right? I mean, it's basically, It's the size of a lunchbox.
That's called the Stream, yeah.
And I own one. If you're into overlanding, it's a great product. But even for survival gear, it's just a good thing to have in your kit.
Yep.
You worked on something with North Carolina recently. Can you share what that was about?
We sent a handful of streams out to North Carolina after the hurricane. We feel like we got a great tool for preparedness because when you have a hurricane or most disasters, a lot of times what happens is the drinking water supply gets impacted one way or another. And that can be, just like with boil water advisories where the system gets damaged and there's potential for bacteria in the water, or maybe you've got sediment that, floods in from rains and floods and that kind of thing. So having a flexible solution where you can treat a range of problems with your water is super handy. So we think we got a great tool for preparedness. We sent about a dozen units out to North Carolina, and got them in the hands of first responders. They were able to put them to use as they went out and, help people in the field, make sure they could treat water when they got there.
Well, I appreciate you doing that. That's
Yeah, no, it's good.
What's your hope for the SHOT Show? Why are you at this show? What are you hoping to achieve?
We've met, a handful of people in the hunting and preparedness and first responder community, and we're looking to meet more of them here. We've grown up around, boats and sailing and adventure vehicles and overlanding. And so we're just trying to broaden our horizons a bit and get to know this community more.
Love it. Well, it's a great product. Since I think you listen to the show, you know probably what's coming next. So building a business is hard. Building a brand is hard. Building distribution is hard. It's a tough task what you're doing, especially because you're creating kind of a new category, which is also very challenging. So as you kind of have navigated this, and you think back on your career and on your time with Guzzle, what's the biggest mistake you made and what'd you learn from it?
The biggest mistake we made, definitely building stuff, just falling into trapdoors with supply chain was probably the biggest challenge. We've always thought that mistakes are where you learn the most. And so I guess I would say we force ourselves to, especially when we're developing products and processes, to just do something and be okay if it breaks or doesn't work. And we don't want that to happen in the customer's hands, but we want to use our product and make sure that happens while we still are in the process of creating the product. So I haven't had any majors, but definitely supply chain is always a challenge, but also having a philosophy of just use the thing and do stuff with it so that you can sort of get a heads up on what's not working. And then also listening to your customers for the smaller details about what's going wrong and being able to put fixes together or just adapt from that information.
Well, no, and that makes sense. That's a good answer. And I think I read a lot of business books and business history, and it seems like anytime somebody's trying to create something really new, you have to kind of pressure test it and break it and process improvement. And there's no easy button to come out with a perfect product, right? You build it and, look at the current iPhone compared to the first one. It's a completely different product. So it's just you keep continuously breaking it and refining it.
And you bring up the idea of a new category. I think that we probably wouldn't have started the business if we didn't think we had a new categories of a product or could somehow make it better than, anything else we've seen out there. Sort of knowing that you're in that space of a new category is important. And then, being aware of the risks and challenges that come along with that.
As somebody who's pretty passionate about overlanding, I love your product. I've loved it since the first time we met. As I was saying off camera, we used it extensively this summer in Idaho, in the backcountry. But I would also encourage people, I think if we've learned anything over the last 5, 6, 7 years, it's that natural disasters happen, scary things happen, and even if you don't have a sprinter and you go off, grid and go overlanding, it's probably not a bad idea to have some basic backup systems to take care of your family. If the water supply gets tainted, have a way to clean your water. And what's nice about your product is it's pretty compact and it's pretty affordable. So you don't have to re-engineer your whole setup. It's so that you could put on the shelf and use as needed. It's the same reason I tell people have a generator or a solar panel.
Absolutely, yeah.
You can have a little corner of a garage and you can put some things there, have a first aid kit, have this stuff. And even if you're not using it every weekend, you're ready if something bad happens. So you can you're not relying on hopefully someone coming to save you.
It works together with all your other preparedness equipment. Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. Well, good luck at the show and good catching up with you.
Thanks for stopping by.
All right, we are still here at the SHOT Show day 1, and I am in the state of Montana booth. The state has been very generous to us over the years because Tread Agency is based here. So we hijacked their couch so I can talk to Jimmy Flatt with Hunters of Color. So Jimmy, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Give us a little background on you and your organization and what are you? What do you do?
Yes, my name is Jimmy Flatt and I am the executive director of Hunters of Color. Hunters of Color is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to addressing the underrepresentation of BIPOC communities in the hunting space and conservation space. And we accomplish that by hosting events, primarily educational events, provide knowledge and put knowledge keepers, people who know how to hunt, with people who are learning or trying to figure out how to hunt.
How does one get into, so you're in Oregon, your nonprofit though is nationwide, you've got a presence in a lot of states. How long have you been doing that? That's a big lift.
Yeah, so we started on the West Coast, primarily in Oregon, where we went to school. We're all 3 founders are Oregon State University alumni. We all came together to teach our friends how to hunt. Once we started to teach our friends, all of our friends started to tell their friends, and so it became a small passion project that turned into a large need across the West.
So this is in college.
This is in college. Once we graduated is when we had time to start pursuing a 501c3. We finally got our status in 2020, but events started in 2019.
Okay, so when did you graduate from college?
2019.
Wow, okay, that's awesome. So right out of school, you were on the gas.
Yeah, I mean, I got my degree in mechanical engineering, and as a passion project, every day after work, I'd come home, and me and our other co-founders were putting together paperwork. We were figuring out what are our programs going to look like. If we were to put ourselves back in the shoes of somebody who was interested in learning how to hunt, what would we need? What would we be looking for? That's where we started, and it started off with a small group of folks in Oregon, and it rapidly caught wind in New York. And so we went from Oregon to New York and then across the whole West Coast.
What are you hunting in Oregon? So is it waterfowl or is it?
Oregon's got a lot of opportunity. We've got elk and deer over the counter, plentiful upland game species, including turkey, chukar, pheasant, and grouse. We also have plenty of waterfowl all across the state with concentrations along the Columbia flyway. Yeah, so that's where I started. Well, I started off hunting in California.
And we talked a little bit before the interview. So you're from Northern California, right? So when I think of Sonoma and that area, I don't necessarily think of hunting. I think of wine and the city. So like, how did that come about?
I grew up in the valley. The valley is super small, and I was getting in trouble for staying out too late.
Yeah.
Missing my curfew because I was just a wild child and pretty feral. A family friend realized that I had this yearning to be outside and was like, let's get him into something that we think he might enjoy, and let's take him on a hunt. So at 8 years old, I was on my first hunt, just experiencing it. And the next year I went and got my hunter safety done. My dad's ex-military, so I've been shooting my entire life. So the transition from knowing how to shoot to applying that to hunting was pretty quick. But yeah, so California, in the Bay Area, specifically in the wine country, we're filled up with turkey and waterfowl and upland species, and even more so lately, wild pigs. And so, I cut my teeth on all those species. And then when it came time to go off to school, I was looking for a state that had plentiful hunting opportunity. And Oregon happened to be.
That's cool. So that was one of the criteria.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, side note, I love Oregon. It's beautiful. And we spent some time there last summer just fishing. And it's pretty hard to beat the beauty of that state. But I wanted to go back a second because you said something I wanted to circle back to. So it's interesting that you're from the Bay Area. You start this organization with your college buddies in Oregon. And the first interest you got was from New York. So are we talking like upstate New York? Or are you talking about like the city?
We're talking straight out of the city. So
what kind of hunting interest? I'm just surprised. I didn't expect you to say that.
there was a study that came out in 2016, which was kind of like, it wasn't just an observation at this point for all three of the founders. There's data that supports our observation that hunting is not diverse. And at the time, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, their studies showed that less than 4% of all hunters that they surveyed identified as non-white. And so there was this huge discrepancy that we were seeing, and clear problem to us because we want our communities to be involved. We need people to be involved for the sake of conservation. We hit it at the right time because COVID happened to be right around the time we graduated, and
Everybody wanted to get outside, new hobbies.
exactly, and everybody wanted to figure out how to put food on the table and not rely on the grocery stores. And specifically out of cities, there were long lines, and sometimes people weren't even able to access food. And so the idea of hunting resonated with a lot of folks. And so they found our program. There was a land steward in the state of New York that said, I have a property if you guys want to come and utilize it. And so our first cohort of hunters in New York, there were 8 new hunters, and they learned how to use crossbows, and we did a kind of a crash course. We partnered with the National Deer Association, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, the Nature Conservancy, and us, and we put together a camp, and all of those individuals are hunting today. They buy licenses every year. They provide funding to the different organizations to do conservation work. And that's just one example of hundreds of events that we've hosted at this point.
That's really cool. How many people work in your organization?
We have 4 full-time staff, so we're small but mighty.
No, but that's really cool. That's amazing. And, it's not something that I think gets spoken about enough. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. But I mean, the slang phrase I hear is like pale, stale, and male, right? Like there's a lot of, that is a thing. And so it's cool that you're trying to open up this lifestyle and this hobby and this industry to other people. What kind of reception do you get, and how are you connecting with people to target them, to bring them into your organization and to get them involved in training? Like, is that something that they're open to and they just don't have an opportunity path? Or is that like, I never even thought of that, why would I do that? Like, what kind of reaction do you get?
It varies. So, we have folks that, for example, I grew up in a family that we fished, we shot. Well, when I tried to get my friends to go out with me and my dad when I was younger, I always heard, we don't do that. That's not something we do. You're gonna go out in the woods with other white people who have guns. That's not something we're gonna do with you.
Oh, I see.
And so you got folks that, internally, there are these stereotypes, there are these biases, there are these made up barriers. They're real to us because we've heard our entire lives that bad things happen in the woods. That's where we get injured, that's where we get lost, that's where we get attacked by bears or mountain lion or whatever. And so those perceived barriers are barriers. The vast majority of communities of color live in urban areas where access to the outdoors is a little harder than those in rural environments. It varies. We have folks that are still very heavily invested in that notion that this is something we don't do.
It's almost like it's a preconceived notion that you're fighting. You're not fighting just maybe actual barriers, whether it's racism or anything else. It's also a preconceived notion of like, that's just like a scary thing that I've been told I shouldn't do, so I shouldn't do it.
Yep.
How do you combat an idea?
Representation.
Okay.
And representation is huge.
Just being there.
Just being there, having people that identify like you and, look and pray like you, and seeing others that you can see yourself in is the way we're combating that.
But honestly, I think that's any group in any lifestyle, to be honest. Like, I think, whether it's fishing or hunting or off-roading, or like one of my kids is trying to get involved in crocheting and she doesn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And like, and like she didn't know where to start. And like YouTube is a scary thing to try and pick something up. But she starts showing up at like the local knitting shop with a bunch of old ladies, and they took her under their wing and they said, hey, like, it's okay that you don't know anything. We're going to show you what to do. And all of a sudden she's part of that community, right? So I'd love to hear like the straight feedback as you introduce people of color into hunting and into these outdoor lifestyle hobbies. I have an idea what you're going to say, but I'm curious, like, what has the reception been as once they go through your program and they get out in the field or they go to a range? How are they treated?
Fine, they're excellent, amazing,
I assume like warmly welcome, right?
warmly welcome. There are instances where, it's not always that way. We have countless examples of folks going out to public land or, places that are supposed to be accessible to everybody who is a citizen. And, even if you're not a citizen, there should be accessible to everybody. And they've been run out by racist asshats
That's too bad.
that think that it's their land or they've been hunting there forever, so they have claim to it.
Do you think that's because they're a person of color, or that's because they're a new person that's not?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can separate any of these things from an identity. So it's you're new to it, you look like you're new to it, or you're perceived to be new to it. And so people have, especially if you've been going to the same spot your entire life and you're generationally visiting the same spot, you might think that you have claim to it.
That tribalism is a real thing. Have you also heard a lot of stories about the opposite, where people have been sort of welcomed to the community? And
Absolutely, yeah. We've heard stories where, people show up to a duck club for the first time, not knowing anyone, and they're immediately brought in as like a family member. We've got people who, New York City, we talked about New York City. People have changed their entire career paths to be based in the outdoor industry because they can't go a day without thinking about being in the woods or being in this space. And so we share commonality, and I think that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to bring more folks to the field and find humanity in a shared experience, and that can be the outdoors. It can be off-roading, it can be, in our case, hunting.
That's a beautiful sentiment. I like the way you're very well spoken. I like it. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is your personal experience. And I'm curious, like for you, you said you were kind of a wild child, and mom and dad are trying to figure out like, how do we control this situation and keep you from running in the streets in the late of night and all that. What was it about hunting? Was it the actual hunting or the taking of the animal and harvesting it? Or was it just like the pursuit and the being outside and the sort of the serenity and the action all kind of wrapped up into that experience? What was it about that whole thing that clearly hooked you?
Yeah, it clearly hooked me. It was really sitting around the table. My dad is from, his family is originally from the Philippines to Hawaii, and then through military and stuff, my dad's family ended up in San Francisco. My mom is originally from Venezuela and moved over when she was 18. So I heard these stories growing up of my ancestors, all my uncles and aunts in Venezuela, and the hunt camps that they would host. The only piece of that culture that still remained in my family was the food. And so when I started to bring home wild game, that food was made in its traditional sense with wild food. then it was like that full connection back to the only remaining piece of my culture that I had. That's where it really came together for me, where it was at the dinner table, feeling a sense of pride of knowing that I went out in the old-fashioned way and I put this food in front of my dad, who then prepared it in this manner, or put it in front of my mom or my grandma to prepare it in this manner. I felt like I was feeding the family. I felt like I was doing my part of keeping like the tradition alive. That's where it clicked, and it was like, I'm gonna do this the rest of my life.
That's so interesting. And in my experience, especially like a hunter from originally California, and as I am as well, obviously that's not as baked into the culture in California as is in places like Montana and, Oregon, Texas, a lot of other states where there's just more land and less people, and I think more opportunity, right? And when I tell people I hunt, I think there's a misconception that they think you like killing animals.
Yep.
And to me, it's like, no, that actually isn't even, that is part of the process, but that's not what I'm signing up for. What I'm signing up for, me personally, and your statement is beautiful, and I love that. And for me, it's about being outside, being outdoors, doing hard things. Like, I like doing hard things. And it's why, like, I don't like doing high fence stuff. Like, that, to me, that's not interesting. Like, I could just go to some farmer's farm and shoot a pig. That's not the same as a wild boar on a 20,000 acre piece of land, and I'm chasing it on foot.
Yep.
And I'm trying to stay upwind of it, and like challenge and the skill, and then the harvesting of it. And similar to you, like, we do a lot of gardening in my family, right? And there's something way more meaningful. I could easily go to the supermarket and buy a bag of carrots.
Yeah.
And it's way cheaper too.
Yeah.
Right. But to grow it from seed in, a garden you tilled and soil you amended, all of a sudden you finally can harvest it and eat it. It tastes better. It's more meaningful, right? And it's the same thing when you harvest game. And so I never heard anyone phrase it like that. And I love that you brought that sentiment up. I'm curious, how many events a year do you do? How many people attend those events? Kind of what's your infrastructure look like?
We've been averaging about 50 events per year across 14 states. And for the last 3 years in a row, we've exceeded 1,000 participants at those events.
Wow. So 50 events, you're averaging like an event a week.
Yes.
That's all over.
All over. They tend to stack up during hunting season, and summer is a really busy time for us. So like, only time of the year that I really have for myself is like a month in the spring, and that turns into my month of turkey hunting. We have events all over the place, and we're diving into the 4 pillars, which are building community, education, giving back, and conservation, and then hunting.
Well, the conservation and giving back thing is another thing that I think is worth touching on, and I'd love for you to speak about this, because I don't think that there's a total understanding outside of the hunting community that hunters and anglers, not only I think personally, are more connected to the land and do more with cleanups and stuff like that, but we're actually physically funding more conservation than almost any other group through Pittman Robertson and stuff like that. Can you talk a little bit about that and how your organization helps?
Yeah, so I'll use another example of like, if you go on a hike. On a hike, you're not paying anything to go be a hiker, sure. unless you go to like a national park or something. You just show up, you go on the hike, you observe nature, and you get the benefits of being in nature. But then you're not presented a requirement to give back.
Right.
And in hunting and fishing, you have to be licensed, which provides money to the state. The state then has an army of biologists who make sure that this resource that we're tapping into is always going to be there. It's going to be cared for, and we're not being over extractive of the resource. On top of that, every single piece of equipment that you buy, primarily firearms and ammunition, are all liable for an excise tax, and all those dollars go into a federal fund that then is given to conservation organizations to put work into conservation, to better the environment.
Yep.
To create more opportunity for more animals, so that there's more opportunity for the humans that like to participate.
And the environment that they live in too. So they're tracking trees and all that stuff.
So those 2 things, the license sales and the excise taxes, those are requirements of the space. The thing that they also don't account for are all the federal dollars that go into conservation that goes straight to hunting organizations to do conservation work. And then they don't think about all the people who are members of conservation organizations like Ducks Unlimited, TRCP, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Pheasant Forever, Turkey. There's
Mule Deer Foundation,
every species has a conservancy of their own. There are land conservancies that focus on the land and the habitat. So there's like the Nature Conservancy is the largest. They primarily are giving back to the land so that these opportunities and the ecosystem is in a balance, including the interactions that people have with the environment. We're not thrown out as a side consideration. How my organization plays into this whole dynamic and industry is that we are bringing folks who have never had a connection or a touch point into this industry. We're building that bridge for folks to go in and start buying the licenses, start becoming part of a conservation, providing or buying equipment and being members for conservation organizations. Beyond that, we're building an ethos at our events that, I heard it all the time growing up. Whenever I'd kill something, my mom would ask me, okay, thanks for the dinner, but now how are you going to give back? And then she was the first one that, brought up the concept of conservation to me, that it was not just this act of taking, it's reciprocal. You take and then you give back. And if you don't have the time or talent or treasure to give, you give it to an organization so that they can, in an organized manner, put together their efforts to, one, lobby or change policy or go out and actively do the conservation work. And so what we do is we're essentially a conduit to those organizations. And we hope that, we can start doing more conservation work of our own. It is my dream that one day we have an education hub of our own that we can do all of our 4 pillars on one site for folks to fly in from all over the country. If they don't want to wait for a chapter or an event to happen near them, they can come out to us.
Very cool. How can people learn more about Hunters of Color? How can they help? How can they support you?
Find us, huntersofcolor.org, if you want to share your knowledge, find knowledge. There's a myriad of ways to participate, but huntersofcolor.org, Hunters of Color on all of our social media platforms that are Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, YouTube. Find an organization that's appealing to you. We've got mentors in 14 states, well, actually all over the place. We've got members in 49 states, people that are just looking for community, ready to go.
Very cool. So last question, and this is a question I ask everyone on the show. As you think back, particularly at your time starting and running Hunters of Color, but even before that, my general philosophy is I wish I was sort of born with all this intrinsic knowledge. I wasn't, right? So the way I learn is by doing, by making mistakes. And I think a lot of people, especially in startups, go through that arc. What's the biggest mistake you made and what did you learn from it?
This one's hard because it was kind of a double-edged sword. But the biggest mistake that I've learned, and now I've learned from it, is saying yes to everything when we were first getting off the ground.
Interesting.
And, I was kind of like, yes man mentality where you have to say yes to everything. We'd have people approach us to partner and I would be like, yes. Or can you do this op-ed? Yes. Can you come to this conference? Yes. And all these things compiled. And so then you get spread real thin real quick. And then you can't be effective at a few things, you become ineffective at a lot of things.
You lose your focus.
Exactly. And so luckily we've been able to rebound. We've become more focused. We are still on that route to, we have to say no to folks who want to do things with us. And that's because we don't have the capacity. We have 4 staff members and, I only can get 40 hours a week out of each of them. And so what I'm trying to do is over deliver on every single thing that we say yes to. And the next phase of our existence is being an organization that, we have a reputation of being the best people to work with, come all the way through on our promises, that we're an organization that people should continually work with.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Well, Jimmy Flatt, Hunters of Color, thank you so much for joining us and telling us your story. I appreciate it. It's great to get to know you.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, we are back here at the SHOT Show on day 2, and I'm with Brooke Afshari from Blackout Defense. And for some background, I am actually a Blackout customer. I wasn't planning on doing this interview with you, but Brooke and I have been emailing, not knowing when I first walked up to the booth that you and I have been emailing, but I found out about your company. So, there's a lot of ARs.
Right.
This whole building is full of companies making ARs. I found out about your company not at a prior SHOT Show, but on YouTube. I actually stopped by here earlier to talk to you about how did you do that? Because I was on YouTube doing some research. I built my own stuff, but I also wanted to buy a turnkey premium home defense weapon, and I went on YouTube, and every major YouTuber I trust, within a couple of months of each other, had these insanely glowing reviews of this one company I had not heard of in Chandler, Arizona, making what they called aerospace grade AR-15s. And they talked about this DTL system and the machining and how everything is insane, the fit and finish. And I finally went okay, I've had 5 of these people talk about this thing. I'm gonna buy one. I ordered one. It's a long wait, which oftentimes there are for a high-end product. So when I walked by, I saw you and I thought, okay, I want to talk to you. So that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So welcome, Brooke.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Can you give us a little background on you and the company?
My name is Brooke with Blackout Defense. We've been in manufacturing for a long time. We started off in aerospace, though we did get our firearms license in 2015. Though we primarily did aerospace work for Honeywell, Raytheon, Boeing from 2015 and previous to that, but primarily from 2015 until 2020, 2021. And that's when we really shifted our focus into building our own brand and building Blackout Defense.
I guess I want to ask you the same question on the show that I asked you earlier, which is I want to get into your product line, what differentiates it, all of that. But before we get into any of that, well, first of all, how do you get a bunch of well-respected YouTubers
Yeah.
to talk about your product like it's the second coming? I'm also sort of impressed with the fact that like selling firearms over social channels is not easy. A lot of those platforms are not super two-way friendly. That's something we're all trying to navigate. And it seems like you guys have found a groove where you're getting your message out. So was that intentional? How did that all happen?
Yeah, so we have an Instagram channel. Actually, we took a unique approach to our social media marketing. We wanted to show people how we make the product. There's a lot of assemblers in this industry. There are fewer true manufacturers, machine shops that are designing, engineering, and machining their own product. And we wanted to show folks that that's what we're doing and to put it out there. So our Instagram channel is, a world into how it's made. That's worked really well for us. And then in terms of, other ways of getting our product out, we're lucky enough to live in the great state of Arizona. There's a lot of local YouTubers through, friends and mutual connections and events. We were able to meet them, show them what we do in the shop, give them our product for review, and then they gave an honest review. So the key is to make a good product, but it happened very organically that these folks, reviewed our product, around the same time period when we released the DTL.
Well, it feels organic. When you walk, I mean, you can tell sometimes when people are getting paid and they're like throwing out discount codes, and it doesn't feel like a affiliate deal. It feels like these guys really, like you could tell, like they loved the gun, and so that's really cool. Let's back up a little bit. So you were an aerospace shop. I assume you're making like components for these different aerospace companies.
You're a job shop.
Tolerances and things are very critical.
Yep.
How do you go from that into making firearms?
Well, yes, we did a lot of aerospace work, and you're a job shop when you do aerospace work. You're getting the print from Boeing or Honeywell, and you're making it to their print. And then when it comes to firearms design, there are prints out there, for the AR-15 platform, but if you want to innovate, you have to design something unique and different. And actually, firearm parts can be very complex. So in terms of machining them, if you want to make a very well-made product, you can machine them with very tight tolerances, same with aerospace work. So we have DMG Moris as our, primary mills. Then we have Mitsubishi Wire EDMs. These are very, very high-end machines. I mean, we have 2 feet of concrete foundation under each one of these machines to isolate them from the vibration of the other machines. They're extremely capable of producing extremely tight tolerance parts, and we just brought that to our own design on the firearm side.
And like you said, I mean, the AR platform, firearm people know, but a lot of people don't. They're designed to be interchangeable. So like you could, in theory, go get like an old Colt AR, and you can get a modern one from one of the bigger manufacturers here, and everything's interchangeable. So what I find interesting about your platform is, first of all, just looking at it, holding it, the tolerances are amazing. Like you can see that it looks different. But you also have some innovation. You guys redesigned some of these components. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So what we did on our AR-15 is we designed a different mounting system for the barrel. So one of the things that's very common in like aerospace or engines is tapers as mechanical fasteners. That's also on our machines, like our tool holders are all taper-based collets because tapers are the best mechanical fastener. So one of the things that we did is we thought, why don't we bring this to the barrel mount and see where that goes. So we designed a modified extension that has a taper, and then we put a secondary taper on the barrel profile just past the chamber. And we have 2 barrel nuts with internal tapers. And what that does is very much like a tool holder, it guarantees centricity. And in the case of an AR-15, it's centricity between the barrel bore and the upper bore. And it's an extremely secure, rigid platform for the barrel mount. So that's what we did on the AR-15, and it worked out great.
I love it. And tell me a little bit about, you've got some new product that you're talking about here at the show.
Yeah,
so
which is behind us, actually. So we wanted to go beyond and really showcase our engineering ability and design, an excellent, extremely accurate, clean shooting DMR for larger calibers. It is very proprietary. We think it is the best design for this platform So it's a modified hybrid gas piston system. It is a short stroke piston. We're bringing the gas to the piston instead of having a very long piston extend out to the gas block. And so what that does is it reduces the mass of the piston itself and reduces the extent of the moving pieces to minimize the deflection on your barrel. This entire platform also is built on a trunnion system, so everything is mounting to a trunnion instead of the barrel nut design in the standard AR-15. And also the BCG is bufferless, so it allows for a folding stock, and we're really excited about it.
That's really cool. I can't wait to see it. What kind of fascinates me about the business you've built, you've taken a commodity item. Like I said, like this platform is extremely common. Every gun shop in America has a lot of inventory. You can walk in and buy 5, 6, 7 different brands. And yet you guys have created this like bespoke thing where the quality is so high. You sell, I think do you sell only direct to consumer, or do you sell to stores as well, like FFLs?
Yes, we do sell to dealers direct for them to stock inventory. We do have selected dealers across the country, but most of our business is direct to consumer. Folks come to our website. And also unique about our business is that we allow our customers to customize their rifles on the assembly side.
And this is actually, I think, the colorway that mine's probably going to be, right? Explain kind of, so this is, the DTL system is in there, right?
Exactly. So internally, there's 2 barrel nuts, and it's mounted based on that taper system.
Okay. And really, I mean, from 100 feet away, this looks like any other rifle. But when you get close is where you really see it. So what I love is that you're disrupting so many things. You're taking a commodity item, and by simply hyper-focusing on quality,
Right.
you're getting a premium price. You're getting customers who are willing to wait because they want the premium quality. You guys are super responsive, so there's a customer service thing too. And you're also disrupting the distribution model, because I think the old model of just like you walk into some big box store and you buy what's on the shelf, and
A black rifle on the shelf, that's what you get.
Right, and now you're saying like, no, you can order direct from the manufacturer, and if you want to make it a bunch of different colors, and
So we're offering a boutique experience for the customer.
so you're really bringing like the Bentley experience to a Honda Accord market. Cool.
But we're offering the Bentley product,
Right.
yes, and the value is there.
So now that you're several years into this, you're coming out with new models. What's next? Do you want to be a giant company with 100 employees? Do you want to stay small? What's the goal?
No, I think we want to continue with the boutique, hyper focused on the customer experience, not super mass production. We want to always allow the customer to speak to us directly, provide input on the design. I mean, one of the things that we're doing on this platform, for example, yes, we've engineered the engine, but we want to get feedback from customers on the skin. So do you have a particular preference on the side charging handle, whether it's going to be on the handguard or the upper receiver? So there are some things that we solicit feedback for before we go into production. We want to have that direct relationship with the customer and continue that as we grow.
The question I ask everybody, and then modify it for you.
Okay.
You did this big pivot about 3, 4.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago, yeah.
The pivot's working, which is awesome.
Yes.
You're growing, you've got a great reputation, you've got a great brand, you've got big plans. As you think back on this arc, even before the firearm stuff and into today, and what are some of the tough things you've experienced, and what have you learned from now? What's your takeaways?
There are so many things when you run a business. I mean, you're always going to make mistakes. That's you should make mistakes. That's how you learn and how you grow. I would say that one thing that is absolutely critical is you have to 100% be committed to the vision. You have to be 100% committed to the brand and building it. There can't be a plan B, right? There is plan A, and you're going to make it successful. I mean, you just have to be all in to make it happen.
Ride or die.
Yeah, that's what
I like it.
That's what it is.
I love it. I think that's true. There's an Eleanor Roosevelt quote I think about a lot. The only way out is through.
That it's 100% when it comes to small business. You have to focus on finding solutions to the problems and find the way through.
Love it. Brooke, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Welcome back to Only the Strong Survive. I am at SHOT Show Day 2, and I'm very honored to be sitting with the Governor of Montana, Governor Gianforte. Thank you for joining us.
Dan, good to be with you.
Yeah, good. So thank you. So this is our 3rd year at SHOT, involved with Montana in one way or another, and your presence at this show has really grown. The booth looks amazing.
We love our firearms and ammunition manufacturers. There's over 150 in Montana. That's more per capita than any other state in the country for 2 reasons. One, Montana's open for business. We love having entrepreneurs. In government, we just try and stay out of the way. And we love our Second Amendment. Freedom and the American dream lives in Montana.
I love that. So, Governor, you gave a talk earlier, and I wanted to ask a couple of questions and have you tell our listeners about a couple of things you mentioned. One of the things you talked about is banking. And obviously, banking is challenging for companies that are in regulated industries like Second Amendment companies. How's Montana dealing with that? What did you do?
Yeah, well, we saw this behavior where these woke banks on the East and West Coast, even if they had banked a firearms company for decades, refused to give them a loan. So we passed a law in Montana that makes it illegal to discriminate in the provision of banking services if you're in the firearms industry. Honestly, we'll yank their banking license. We have a number of banks in Montana that love to bank firearms manufacturers. So if there are companies out there that want to operate in an environment without the heavy hand of some woke banker, they should come to Montana.
I love that. I think that's really cool. One of the other things I wanted to ask you about is you have a red carpet program for businesses. How does that work? What is that?
Yeah, so the red carpet program, there's no cost. It's run by our Department of Commerce. Very simply, if someone is interested in expanding in Montana to get the Montana advantage or moving their headquarters, they can call the Department of Commerce. Paul Green is the director, very accessible. What we do is we spend a little bit of time on the phone with them to understand what that entrepreneur's criteria for selection are, and then we build a 2-day visit agenda around their criteria. Literally, we roll out the red carpet. And there's companies here at the SHOT Show that we met last year that we've now cut ribbons on in Montana. And here are the advantages. First, we love our Second Amendment.
Here.
Montanans have a work ethic that won't quit, and we have a quality of life that can't be beat. This is what we're offering. If you want a special deal, tax abatements, you probably have to go someplace else. We're offering an opportunity to prosper and live a life that's just awesome. And as a hunter and fisherman, I can tell you, Montana is one of the few places you can hunt big game 11 out of 12 months. The 1 month you can't hunt big game in Montana is July, and the fishing's pretty good in July, so it's a great life.
Well, if that's your view out your window,
Yeah.
that's pretty good. One of the things I also want to ask you about, Governor, is unlike a lot of politicians, your career, you're an entrepreneur, you're a businessman. You started a very successful business. You bring that mindset. Can you give us a little background about kind of your life before public life?
I'm an electrical engineer by training. My master's is computer science. My wife and I have started 5 technology businesses. The most recent one was in Bozeman, Montana. We had this crazy idea that the internet might, in fact, remove geography as a constraint, and that's where we wanted to raise our family. So we moved to Bozeman 30 years ago.
Wow.
We started with $5,000 in an extra bedroom of our house. That business grew to be one of the state's largest commercial employers. We had 1,100 employees.
Wow.
We were publicly traded for 8 years. And then it was the first cloud application business that Oracle acquired. They paid almost $2 billion for it. Now Oracle is the largest commercial employer in Bozeman. So we've learned a lot through that, but mostly what we learned is you can run a global business from Montana. You can have a quality of life that can't be surpassed. Since I came into office, we passed a law that said if you start a business in Montana or move a business to Montana and it's your legit headquarters, you have at least 25 employees, there's no tax on the sale of corporate stock. So we let people keep the fruits of their labor because we want the jobs.
Well, I think that's really interesting. So basically, what you're saying is we're not going to pile incentives on the table. We're going to offer a better quality of life, a superior workforce, and we're not going to get in your way.
Yeah, I always say I'm with the government, but I'm here to stay out of your way.
I like it. I like it.
Here's the reason why we did that. Montana produces the best beef in the world. We feed the world with our grains, but we've been exporting beef and grain for decades. And along with the beef and the grain, we've been exporting our kids and our grandkids. If we don't improve our economy, we're not going to keep families together. That's why we're doing this.
That's really profound. I hadn't thought of that before, so I appreciate you doing it. A question that I ask a lot of our guests, the reason the show is called Only the Strong Survive is entrepreneurship is hard. Starting business is hard. Failure rate before 5 years is over 70%. It takes kind of a lot of grit to build something in long term. You've done it multiple times. You're now in leadership, as a governor. As you think back on your career in governance and in business, what's kind of the biggest mistake you made and what did you learn from it?
Well, I think anybody who started a business knows the highs are really highs and the lows are really low, and they come at a really high frequency. Everyone's experienced that. We bootstrapped all our businesses. Inc. magazine did an article on our business called Start With Nothing. I love hiring very capable young people. They don't know things are impossible yet. I just finished reading Elon Musk's biography.
It's a great book.
And boy, Walter Isaacson, it's incredible what that man has accomplished just by saying, screw it, we're going to do it anyway.
Yep.
And I think it's that sheer determination that makes such a difference. I wrote a book entitled Bootstrapping Your Business. Start and grow a business with almost no money. And I've lectured at Harvard and Stanford and Berkeley and London School of Business. to their MBA classes. It's so different because if you ask an MBA, how do you start a business? They say, well, you write a business plan and you go raise money. And what they don't say is you start a bonfire and you pitch the money on the bonfire and you hope there's a company there before you run out of money.
Right.
You look at all the business starts in the US, less than 1% of those businesses raised professional money. Most entrepreneurs bootstrap it. They put stuff on the credit card. They figure out how to scrap together some cash flow. So I give this talk on bootstrapping. The students love it. I've never been invited back to any of these places because it's so different than what the business schools teach. That's the American way.
I love it. That's excellent. Thank you so much, Governor. Really appreciate your time.
It's great seeing you.
Appreciate everything you're doing.
Have a great show.
Thank you. Okay, we are back at the SHOT Show, and I am in the Olympus Arms booth with Shelly Marino, and we actually were fortunate enough to meet you folks last year through the state of Montana. They introduced us, and we got to spend some time together, and man, what a difference a year makes. You guys have got a lot of product in this booth.
We do. We've been working hard to get it to market, figuring out some of our like manufacturing issues and things that have popped up over the last year, but now we're ready to rock and roll.
To give our listeners background, the SHOT Show, if you've never been, is not like a normal trade show at a convention center that's like one big building. There is a couple of more like trade show type buildings. They've got like ballrooms in a hotel. There's all these spaces full of all these companies. And my favorite space at SHOT is this sort of like basement, big space underneath the convention center.
Yep.
And that's where a lot of the smaller businesses, they're not SIG or like Kimber, they're smaller businesses that are usually like somebody had an idea, they manufactured a prototype, they bring it to market, they come to SHOT, they start talking about this idea, maybe they get on the radar of a retailer or a government agency, they grow their business. That is such an American success story, bootstrap thing. I just love it. So I really love this space. And I remember last year coming and meeting you folks, and you had, I think, like one firearm that's your invention that we're going to talk about. And I think you had a handful of demo models.
Yep.
And now you've got all sorts of stuff going on here. So give us some background on Olympus. Like where did the idea come from, and what is it that you manufacture that's a different than like a standard rifle or firearm?
Sure. Olympus started with an idea of my husband's career military. Michael is actually the designer and co-inventor of this platform. We call it the RB-10 Vulcan. That's the rifle platform that we're marketing this year and we're bringing to market. He has spent over 20 years now in the military. He's almost retired. He's got about a year and a half left. When he was going through sniper school, he shot the Barrett 50 cal and was just astounded at how much less recoil you could shoulder fire a 50 caliber rifle. And he was just like, why can't we make this for like smaller calibers? And lots of people said, it can't be done. So he started, research and development. It kind of like started with like drafts and pictures on a napkin and ideas. He built the first prototype out of like square aluminum from Home Depot.
It's like at home in your house or in your garage?
Yep, at our garage. He cannibalized a few different types of rifles and put a prototype system together. And that very first prototype model only did like one shot at a time. It wouldn't even extract or eject or anything. Like we had to hand extract the round or the casing from the rifle and everything. And that's where it all started. And then from there, we developed kind of like the second generation, and we brought it here and got some buzz about it. I'd say the overall research and development has been probably 10 years now.
Wow.
Yep. And then about 5 years ago, we competed for the next generation squad weapons program, and we had a variation of this model for the Army. We didn't get picked up. Sig Sauer got picked up for that contract, but we wanted to bring it to the consumer market. The first intention was to go to the military, and when we didn't get picked up for that, we thought, well, we can take it to the consumer market because this is awesome. It significantly reduces recoil, and so we shoot high-powered caliber rounds. Our standard model is a 308. It's based on long recoil action. We call it modern long recoil because it's not pure long recoil like John Moses Browning first invented, but it's a combination of long recoil in our design, and it's kind of brought it into the 21st century. And now we have a standard platform that looks a lot like
let's check it out.
Looks a lot like an AR-10, but it's not. It does not have any gas in it whatsoever. Not a gas system, not gas impingement, not gas piston. This is all mechanically operated. So that barrel, I'll show you here on camera a little bit, can recoil 5 1/4 inches into the receiver. And what that does is when you shoot a round, the energy that's produced after that shot from the powder, it uses up that energy to cycle the barrel backwards and act on the bolt.
The barrel is spring-loaded, and it's ejecting the spent casing and then loading the new round
Yep.
instead of a bolt carrier group.
So the bullet comes out the end, and that creates like this pressure as it's coming out, and that pressure pushes the barrel back. That acts on the bolt, and both the barrel and the bolt stay locked together that whole length of the action. And the bolt is held to the rear. The barrel returns to battery, and then the bolt reciprocates back and picks up around and chambers and locks, and you're good to go. And that's how it fires semi-automatically.
So, and that absorbs most of the recoil.
Yep, the energy that's spent recoiling the barrel and actually moving the barrel and the bolt back, it's used up. So what normal recoil that you might feel in let's say a bolt action gun, where you feel a big punch on the shoulder, all of that energy is being used to move the barrel and the bolt. And so it's used up, and so you don't feel it in your shoulder.
Very cool. Can I take a look?
Yep, absolutely.
Wow, and it's form factor about like an AR-10.
Yep, it's lighter than most AR-10s. It's right at about,
It's almost like an AR-15, to be honest. Like wow.
yep, it's a lot lighter than most standard AR-10s. It's right at about 8.5 pounds with like depending on the configuration, or as light as 8 pounds.
That's wild. That's really cool. So I have a lot of questions. So
Sure.
you can put that aside. So
Yep.
First of all, so Michael is still in the service. He's still in the Army.
Yep, he's with Montana National Guard.
Okay.
He has also served on active duty Army for about 6 to 7 years. Can't remember the time frame, but in 2008, he got out of active Army and came back to Montana. His goal was to ranch, and he was going to finish up his reserve service in the Guard. And so then he got on active duty orders, and he finished out active duty career as a Montana National Guardsman.
What is it like trying to, I mean, first of all, starting a new business is hard. Starting a new manufacturing business is extremely hard.
Absolutely.
Because you have supply chains and you got to figure out distribution and like all this stuff. Starting a new manufacturing business in the 2A space, which is highly regulated. It's not like you invented some kind of new candy dispenser or something. I mean, this is highly regulated, government oversight.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, your partner and the husband and the inventor is also having to split his time because he's still in the military. How did you guys make all that work? How did you find the time? How'd you?
He's just pursued it outside of regular career hours. We've had a lot of, he has a partner who's helped him develop this from the ground up, from kind of the initial prototypes. And when we took it to the Army, this partner, Dave Lake, got really involved, and he's helped us develop every iteration since then. That's what he did full time. We hired him kind of like an engineer to really like get this prototype to market and get it to where it is now. But my husband has spent a lot of long hours on the computer in the shop. He still does a lot of that, sometimes home at 11 p.m. or later.
Is this just like bootstrap using your savings? Like, how do you fund something like this?
Apart from our own money, family and friends, we have a partner company. Olympus is actually like our consumer brand, and we actually had a company called Mars Incorporated that we first started when we were pursuing government contracts, and it still pursues government contracts, but that was the first initial company, and we have about 30 investors, and we have some small-time investors right now, and yeah, pretty much it's just bootstrapping and family investment.
Wow.
Yep.
And what's your role in the company?
So I do kind of all of the things.
Oh, the 21 hats, you wear them all.
Yep, absolutely. I do a little bit of business management, most of the marketing. We've outsourced some of the marketing a little bit just because everything is overwhelming, but we really don't have the funds right now until we really start selling and getting out of the market to hire a whole crew of people. So mostly that's just been focused on me filling in wherever I can, but I do a lot of the business management, marketing.
That is small business startups, right? You got to kind of do all the jobs, yeah.
Taking care of the kids as well, yeah.
So, yeah, how many kids do you have?
We have 2 girls, yeah, 9 and 3.
Oh, wow. Oh, see. And 3.
Yes.
You got your hands full.
Yes, she is a handful.
Wow. All right. Now, are you guys from Montana originally?
So Michael he grew up in Montana on a ranch. I was originally born and raised in Austin, Texas. Yep. And we met through a family friend of his who was originally from Texas but moved to Montana. And that friend came to visit some family down in Texas. And we eventually met through that family friend and stayed in touch. I think we were like teenagers when we first met, and then stayed in touch throughout the years. And when we were in our 20s, we reconnected, and then the rest is history.
That's really cool. What are your hopes for the company? What are your goals next few years? You have a lot more product here today than you had a year ago. I think I see a pistol over there, and you've got some short barrel stuff and
Short-barreled stuff, yeah, pistol variants. So our ultimate goal is, to go national, all over the United States. We have a website now that can take consumer orders as well as like retailer orders, and you can sign up there and get like a retailer, for instance, can sign in and see retail prices. And it's like a retail shopping mall.
So are you shipping guns now? Like, are they for sale to the consumer?
Yep, absolutely.
And what's the feedback then so far?
Feedback's been great. We've had some, a few minor issues here and there that have popped up. One thing that popped up this last year that's really kept us from like launching. Well, there's been a lot this last year that's happened that's kept us from really launching. But one of them is that, for instance, we outsourced our barrels, and we started to see a lot of like accuracy problems that we weren't having initially. So we backtracked and tried to figure out where that was coming from, and eventually discovered it was the barrel that was the problem. So we brought barrel manufacturing back in-house. But we manufacture everything with this rifle, anything from the bolt, the barrel, the upper and lower receiver, all of the like little parts. The only thing we really don't manufacture is the buttstock and the hand grip and some of the small controls.
Yeah, that makes it the plastic stuff.
Yep, plastic. So everything's manufactured from like premium materials like 70-75 aluminum. Standard in the industry is like 60-61, but ours is 70-75 aerospace grade aluminum. It's a mechanical rifle, so it needs to be like impact resistant. So we use very premium metals and materials, and it's all manufactured in-house in the USA. We've got a crew of about 30 people manufacturing in our facility in Helena, and we have like probably, I think, about a 4,000 square foot building that is jam-packed with like CNC machines and lathes. It's literally like a puzzle to get in and out and through those things.
That is a huge lift to make everything in-house.
Yes.
And for our listeners who aren't totally dialed in on the firearm thing, the mil-spec AR platform, 2/3 of the companies at this show build a mil-spec AR platform, and you can make it nicer and you can use better materials, and
Yeah.
you can, there's lots of things you can do to sort of generally kind of improve overall performance, but it's all kind of the same stuff. You can buy tooling, you can buy off-the-shelf parts, but what you guys are doing, because this is a totally new design, there is no like CAD file you can download. Like, you've got to make it all, right?
Exactly. We draw all our own CAD files, do all our own programming for the machine. So you have to take that drawing and then write a program that the machine can understand. And then that machine makes your materials. And then you have to have an operator that operates that machine as well.
So you have really chosen to go down, I think, on one hand, a very hard road because everything is new.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, a lot of opportunity because it's a totally new thing with a new technology. And I'm curious, what was the process like approvals, working with the feds, working with, I don't know if there is state level regulation, like how regulated is it to say, I have a new design of a firearm that I want to put into production and sell to the consumer?
It's actually not as hard as some might think, depending on the type of firearm that you're doing. If you're doing like standard firearms that consumers can buy, anything above 50 caliber is usually regulated very, very heavily. So we could go,
That's probably okay.
yeah, all the way up to 50 cal in like a rifle. And you have to be careful about like our small barrel rifles. We manufacture them as pistols, not small barrel rifles, because that can cause some problems, with different states' laws. But overall, the process to get your FFL, the hardest part is getting like the licenses on the city level and to go ahead to manufacture, do like manufacturing where we're at in our location and getting permission to do that, to let them know, hey, we don't have any chemicals or anything that we're releasing, nothing, toxic. It's just so the standard metal machining.
The typical local stuff. They just want to make sure you're not doing something weird.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even a firearms thing. It's just a
Yep, absolutely. Like,
manufacturing thing.
yeah, we use certain chemicals like coolants and stuff for the machine, so we have to make sure we're following those rules. As far as firearms go, yeah, like you have to follow rules as far as like having a license, and then when we transfer something to a consumer or a retailer, it's not going directly to a consumer, it's going to an FFL dealer,
Right.
where the consumer can pick it up.
So, one of the things I talk about a lot on the show is how hard it is to start a new business, start a new, anything. Typically, the way most people navigate that process is School of Hard Knocks. As you think back on this whole arc with you and Michael and Olympus Arms and getting you to the point where you're at today and getting where you want to go in the next 5 or 10 years, what's the biggest mistake you made and what did you learn from?
The biggest mistake, well, we don't believe in failures, right? Mistakes are like next steps to how do we make the product better. Types of mistake we make are what type of materials we might use, and learning through the School of Hard Knocks how hard it is to outsource parts and get the type of quality machining and materials that you need to the specs that you need, and how tough that market is. in that industry is. And that's a big reason why we decided to bring everything in-house, is so that we could quality control it.
That's an interesting one. So it's really, you learned keeping it vertical is really important.
Yeah.
Then you have control over everything.
Yep, absolutely. And that gets very expensive very fast. And one of the hardest things that we found is finding the qualified people who are either in Montana or want to move to Montana, who can actually write programs for CNC machines at the level that we need. And that type of person is like a unicorn in the industry, is very, very valuable. And so we're also really big on hiring quality jobs and paying as well as we can, and making career opportunities for small towns in Montana, because that's what it's about. If we want Montana to grow, an industry to grow, if we want to have a successful state for our kids and our grandkids, then we need to have industry here that can hold up career opportunities and lifestyle for our kids and our kids' kids. And so we're really big on quality jobs. We call them career jobs, not just a job where you're making $15 an hour, but something. I think our minimum wage starts at $20 an hour, and that's the base wage, no matter if you're cleaning floors or in toilets, or you're actually standing at a machine and you're kind of like an apprentice learning the job.
I love what you're saying, because I think everything you just said is connected, right? The vertical manufacturing, using higher quality materials, having a control over the process, hiring the best people you can, paying them really well. Like that all is kind of, I mean, there's so many businesses, from restaurants to aerospace companies, manufacturing companies, that have kind of figured that out. That like, if you invest in the best in every aspect of the company, you're going to get a superior product, and then the consumer will recognize that and reward you.
Yep, absolutely. And that's our hope, is that our dedication to customer service. And, we're going to make mistakes, and there's going to be mistakes in manufacturing. Sometimes that's just part of what it is. But if we can say, hey, we understand you're paying a premium price, but you're also getting an absolutely premium product that we stand behind 100%, and we will work with you, whatever challenges you might be facing with, the manufacturing or how to use the rifle. This year, that's a big lesson we've learned, is because it's such a new system, customers and even people who are interviewing and demoing them, it doesn't fire and operate the same way a standard AR gas system does that everybody is used to. So we've learned that we've had to come full circle and start really like making sure that we are either there demoing with people and teaching them this is how to use our rifle and this is what to look out for, or setting them up for success by having a really good video setup or user manual, things that they can use to really learn about our product a lot more, because there is literally nothing out there like it, at this level for the consumer. It really is quite a different experience to shoot it. So there's a lot to learn. It really changes the shooting experience. When you've been taught to anticipate that kick and all of a sudden you're not anticipating it, it can change the way you shoot entirely.
Well, next time I'm up there, I might call you because I want to demo one.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely do it.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, where can people learn more about Olympus Arms?
They can go to www.olympus-arms.com. They can also email us at customer service at olympus-arms.com or info at our website address. Yep.
Very cool. Well, Shelly, it was great chatting with you and appreciate it. And thanks for your time. And it's great to catch up.
Thank you. I appreciate the time as well.
Okay, we are at the end of, what is this, day 4 on the ground here? I think we're kind of wrapping things up, and it has been an interesting learning curve for us doing this without a producer. So shout out to Michael and Katie. You guys do a good job, and we missed you.
Yeah, it's much needed.
So Beth, what do you think? How'd it go?
It was great. I had a great week. Always great to see the new products. We always love that. Sometimes get distracted by some of the new product out there, but definitely great to see some brands support our clients and check out what's new in the industry. And I think a lot of great feedback for our team as well.
And I know, Beth, you were in sort of the intro to this episode, and then we did some interviews, and hopefully they'll come out. So when we get back to the office, we'll find out. You were kind of behind the scenes running the camera and stuff when I was talking to people, but to fill everyone in. So SHOT Show is really interesting because it's got this interesting mix of major giant corporations, some that are privately owned, many that are owned by holding companies or private equity groups. Downstairs, there's a lot of little companies that are startups, and we've kind of talked to a lot of them. We've probably had, 50, 60 different conversations over the last few days. They were all really good. What do you think the vibe was like in terms of economy, business outlook? What was your takeaway on that?
We're in a changing environment real time here. And so, I think there's a lot of optimism. There's a lot of change in marketing sort of landscape and tactics. And so it was interesting to hear that feedback, a lot of which, we've sort of seen coming down the line here. But I would say overall, very positive. There's a level of excitement, particularly on day one at this show. The other thing that we're seeing that I think, we love to see is sort of the crossover and vertical and interest within outdoor, all the way into overland and automotive, which of course we love to see. But yeah, I think overall, it was a great show. The energy level was really high. And I think NSSF, shout out to them because they put on a great show. Even the folks working here, sort of behind the scenes, I love to see it. They're just happy to be here and they're very friendly. They're very helpful. So that's not something you see at every trade show, I would say. So overall, I think really everything from the emerging brands downstairs to the big brands upstairs, there's a level of energy that you don't always see at trade shows.
Yeah, I would agree. It was interesting because, SEMA seems like a decade ago, but it was really only, 2 months, or I guess.
Just a couple months ago, yeah, with the holidays.
Yeah, early November to now January 20th. So, 2 or 3 months ago. And SEMA was a great show. I thought it was the best SEMA they've had since COVID.
Yes.
Great turnout, great crowd density. The manufacturers had a real positive vibe. We went through supply chain issues and softening consumer demand. Things were crazy for a couple of years during COVID. And then I think there was some market saturation stuff on the automotive side and things got soft for a couple of years. This year at SEMA, it felt really positive. Like everyone had a really strong outlook. They're feeling good. I think that was even more so here. And what you were kind of referencing earlier. So the first day of the show was January, or maybe it was this, I guess, Tuesday the show opened and Monday was January 20th. So that was the inauguration that will have some impacts on this industry. So people, I think, had a lot of positive vibes about that. But to your point, the firearms side of outdoor has had a tough run for marketing the last few years because a lot of the magazines that were the traditional channel have gone away. There's still some really good ones left and some new ones. And we made some new friends, companies and people that are even small little family businesses that are starting their own kind of hybrid print publication, online outlet, newsletter. They're figuring it out. They still see value in print. We met the folks from Hook and Barrel. They seem great. They produce a nice high quality piece. It's our friend Sean Holman today, who is now kind of an independent contractor and has the Truck Show podcast and is doing some print stuff as well. And he's got a lot of good stuff going on. You picked up a copy of the new, now privately held Field and Stream. It's beautiful. It looks like a coffee table book. So all that's really good. But, the social channels, which is where most of these companies have gone, have been really unpredictable. And having to build a marketing plan and a sales outlook and how do you market direct to consumer and how do you create pull at the bottom of the funnel for products you're selling through retail when your entire channel might get removed or a social platform or a video sharing platform might totally shut down a bunch of your content. That's a hard thing to plan on. So it seems like that's getting worked out and people see like the platforms want to maybe be a little easier to work with. But also I think on the ledge reg side, like we had a conversation with the governor earlier, I thought was really interesting where the governor of Montana, who, that's where Tread is based, was kind of one of the first in the nation to say, hey, look, this is a manufacturing, base. These are good high paying jobs. These are good companies, and we don't want like the banking system to shut them down, and by extension, the marketing outlets as well. So it seems like, I think uncertainty is challenging for any business. And anytime the environment starts to shift to where people say, okay, whether I like it or not, I know what's coming down the road and I can prepare for it.
Yeah. What we were seeing there, I think for many years was a lack of confidence of what to do. And I think the road is still unclear, but there seems to be a higher level of confidence that it's going to be okay. We are going to navigate this. However that looks exactly, we're not sure, but we will navigate it.
Absolutely. And I want to say this on the show, on record, talking to you right now. I am so grateful that I get to work with you. I am very proud at this show, our third SHOT Show together with Tread, that the first year we came here, no one knew who we were. No one knew what we were doing. No one had ever heard of our company. And they're like, we were like strangers in a strange land, right? It was cool, but it was also a little weird because it's like, like imposter syndrome. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, you're a new kid in the new school district.
100%. You're the new kid on the first day of school and you're like, oh, this is like real scary and I don't know anybody and they might like beat me up and throw me in a trash can. That didn't happen. It was positive. I thought last year we made a lot of progress and we had some amazing meetings. We'd already had some projects under our belt, so that was really cool. Coming here this year, first of all, we're working with one of the biggest brands in the entire show, one of the most legacy brands in the entire industry, so that feels good. But what feels even better for me as your coworker is we're walking into booths and people see the logo. They know what Tread is. They know what we've done. They know you. They know your work. They know our work. They know our team. And they're like, oh, you guys do those cool events, or we know you're working on this other thing and we want to talk to you. And So to me, that really felt great to say like, hey, there's an element of resilience here where if you just keep showing up and you stick to what you know, like people are going to notice.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely great to see. I think over time it just builds, and the outdoor industry, like many industries, but in some ways unique, is really built on relationships and trust and long term. And I think we're starting to reap some of the benefits of our work in that regard.
Well, you're doing a great job. Do you see a convergence? Because I mean, I think for a long time, this was a firearm show. And then there was other shows that focused on other segments of the industry. And it seems like there's a lot of interest, like you said earlier, where like, I mean, shoot, almost every meeting we had this week, people were bringing up overlanding. They're bringing up off-roading. They're bringing up the side-by-side and power sports market. That was not happening 2 years ago.
Right.
So do you see some sort of dovetailing happening? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I definitely think there's crossover. I mean, there's a reason that we're both interested in anything from overland to shooting sports, right? We've also seen that in our work, particularly in this year in doing market research of really understanding your audience. And sometimes that has nothing to do with, let's take political affiliation as an example. It really maybe comes down to values. Do you value adventure? Do you value certain freedoms? What do you value? And do you know your audience? And in many cases, you might see that someone who is interested in shooting sports, they want to be confident, they want to be capable in the backcountry, whatever it is. That is a similar value system as those who want to build a rig that is then going to get them where they need to go, be self-reliant, etc. So I look at it as, to some degree, knowing your audience that can share the same values, even if they don't necessarily historically live in the same outdoor vertical. There is a lot of crossover there.
I hadn't thought of it that way, and that's a really interesting point. And I think, for better or for worse, maybe for worse, people are starting to wake up and say, no one's coming to save me. Now, the reasoning behind that is maybe a little scary, but a lot of people are starting to have those internal dialogues or those external conversations. And that's why I think a lot of people are interested in whether we talked to Tyler at Guzzle, right? I think there's a small number of people out there who are just, they spend so much time camping, they just need to drink lots of water coming out of a river, and they don't want to get like Giardia or something. I think the majority of his sales, not knowing this directly, but as a guess, are people that are like, I want to have this just in case. And maybe just in case as I'm going camping and I have nowhere to fill up my water tank on my Sprinter. Or maybe it's I want this to sit in the shelf in my garage just in case. And I think there's an element of that in firearms. I think there's an element of that in flashlights, and there's an element of that in a lot of the work we do. And then I think there's also a lot of people that are finally realizing, and maybe as our country is starting to wake up to like the importance of health and physical exercise and being outside, that like depending on where you live, some people have the ability to just go out in their own backyard and they have some space and some land they can do that. If you live in an urban setting, you probably have to go somewhere to do that.
Sure.
And so it's cool that we get to work in an industry, whether it's tents or backpacks or overland rigs or even firearms, that like, whether you live in the middle of downtown Portland or you live in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming, we're giving them the ability to do that.
I think it's really exciting. I think sometimes there may have been some element of a societal shift to, whether it's COVID or whatever else, where we were almost over domesticated for a while. And I think, you see an interest in wild food, for instance, or knowing where your food sources are coming from. And I think, that complements these industries very well.
Okay, so you had to know this was coming because you've been listening to me ask this question for days. So in the beginning of this episode, we talked about your background. You and I have been spending a lot of time together the last couple of days, and you've listened to me ask this question like 10 times. Over the course of your career.
I should have known this was coming.
Yeah. What is the biggest mistake you made? What'd you learn from it?
Oh, goodness. The biggest mistake I've made. I guess there's not any one singular one that stands out, but, something that comes to mind immediately that we've been sort of mentioning recently, and just something I think about sometimes too, is something I have sort of struggled with over the years is you want to say yes to everything. You want to say yes to every social engagement. You want to say yes to every business opportunity. And not that I'm saying that everyone should say no more, but sometimes there's a lot of value in saying no. And I think as someone who, has a certain level of ADD all my life, staying focused can be really challenging for people, I think. But there's a great value in really sort of putting your blinders on towards the mission. And that's not to say you shouldn't pivot, and when there's new information, you should consider that new information and you should be flexible and change course. But there can be an element of distraction, particularly I think when you're building something like Tread, right? And I've spent a lot of time working in startup type environments, and that's where I like to be. And you kind of have to learn how to navigate when to say yes and when to say no. And there's certainly been times where I've sort of overextended myself or become distracted by not saying no.
Good advice. Yeah, it's taken on too much, and there's also like a choose your battles element to that too, right? Like,
Yeah, it kind of sounds negative, so there's a balance there, but I think it's a positive thing if you kind of flip the argument there and say it's really more about staying focused. It's not about saying no. It's about saying, what are the things I'm going to say yes to that are going to move me closer to my goals, and being able to learn which falls in which bucket.
so it's yes and. It's saying no to certain things so you can focus on the things that are really important and then executing those at a very high level.
And I think that's a positive thing, even though saying no innately sounds like a negative thing. If it gets you closer to your goal, then that's what it is.
Yeah, it's focus. Well, and that is such a big issue now. I think it's so easy to get distracted, right? Like we're just getting pounded with information 24/7. I mean, like every time I open my LinkedIn, I've got 10 messages and 9 of them are someone trying to sell me some service I don't want, right? So it's like, how do I stay focused in that environment? And it's even like teammates and client work and everything else. It's like, okay, I'd rather do 4 or 5 things really, really well today than 10 half-ass.
And I think a big part of that too is like, what is the vision that we're working towards? Because if that's not clear, then how do you get there? And you're going to be more likely to get distracted. And that's why I try to plan for things and try to stay on course. Doesn't always work. And sometimes there's some fun pivots to be had, let's be honest. But overall, I think that's something I've learned over the years, and it has been learned through challenges.
Right on. Well, thanks, Beth.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a fun show, and it's been great to be out here.
Likewise.
I think we're going to go hit the Montana reception next.
Yeah, you can probably hear them in the background. They're getting rowdy over there. So we're going to go over there and wrap things up. So hopefully everyone enjoyed our little preview or a little sneak peek at SHOT Show 2025. And thanks for joining us on OTSS. If you like this episode, please like, share, and review it. And as usual, we'll talk to you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.